Michael Maria Delgado. I saw something about a research study about, I think, about whether orange cats are friendlier. It probably was six cats. It was probably not the kind of research study you, as a PhD, admire and respect. But what about orange cats? Are they friendlier?
Yeah, so I mean, there's been a lot of, I think people have strong opinions about how coat color of a cat may be associated with a personality. I don't know if you're like the single brain cell or orange cat behavior, but there's really no scientific evidence that strongly supports this idea. And in fact, I did one of the earliest studies on
Oh,
this
you
topic.
did.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think it was published in 2012, maybe 2013, but we didn't look at cat behavior and coat color. We looked at people's perceptions of
Oh,
cat
nice.
behavior and coat color, right? So it's very clear that people have strong biases based on coat color. But since then, there have been a few studies trying to correlate actual behavior, like in shelters and coat color. And I would say we're still there's no good evidence. I think it's just like when people talk about, of course, breeds are more selected for
Right.
physical traits, and then
Yep.
sometimes there are some personality traits that I
Yep.
think that we can see differences. But with coat color, we're not really breeding cats. We're not selecting only the orange cats that are friendly to breed.
Right.
Like most of these cats are free breeding, and we don't have a lot of control over their mating habits. So I think we have to take it with a grain of salt. I think people can have a confirmation bias where they look for
Right.
evidence that confirms their existing belief. So I think orange cats are friendly. So whenever I see a friendly orange cat, I'm, ooh, friendly orange cat. And the other thing that we saw in our original study was that people had a lot of negative associations with tricolored cats, so the tortoiseshells and
I wanted
calicos.
to ask about that because people say torties are, I don't know,
Tortoise,
rare
right?
and therefore somehow difficult.
They're not, I don't think they're rare, right? But they're female. So,
Oh,
what we suggested was that there might be some more sex-based biases about cats where people, because most orange cats are male, right? So about 80%
oh,
of
I
orange
didn't know
cats are
that.
male.
I
Yeah.
didn't know
Yeah, so when you break down the genetics of how a cat ends up orange or tortoiseshell, it's a sex-linked gene. So tortoiseshells are almost always female. Once in a while, you'll see the rare, like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,000,000
that.
male
Wow.
tortoiseshell, but that's what's rare. There's plenty of
I see.
torties in the world,
I
and I have
see.
3 torties, so
Oh, yeah,
I'm a
that's
fan of
true.
torties. But so I think that people might have perceptions about male and female cats. And again, we don't have a ton of good evidence to support, like saying all males are like this, all females are like this, or
Right.
even most, right? And there's probably more research looking at sex that I would trust than color, because the other thing too is like a lot of the research on coat color and personality is survey based. So they're asking the person at home, answer these questions about your cat's
Right.
personality, and then also tell me what color your cat is. And so, depending on how the survey is constructed, what someone thinks is a gray tabby, someone else might think is a brown tabby.
Oh, that's funny.
And then you get into everyone who has a gray cat thinks they have a purebred Russian blue or something. And so I think people's characterization, even when I worked in a shelter, sometimes the cats would get labeled their coat color. And I don't know if I agree with
It's
that. And then you get into
interesting.
things like variations on coat colors, like patterns, white patches, which we know that in other animals, coloration can affect. I mean, it's all genetic, right? And but we also know that personality is not controlled by a single gene. So whereas being a tortoiseshell is controlled by a single gene, your personality is comes from many places and not just genetic, right? So it has to
Right.
do with your socialization and the environment you live in. How many other cats do you live with? I can't tell you how many people a cat was unhappy in one situation. People are like, this cat's not very nice
Right.
because they lived with 10 other cats. You put that cat in a single cat house and they're like the sweetest cat ever.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think we have to be really careful about stereotypes because I think they can also be harmful, right? So if people say things that aren't true based on a cat's coat color, then that might set up people's expectations and they might either like only seek a cat of a certain color or completely not even consider
Right.
cats of a different color. And I can tell you from working with thousands of cats, I've met plenty of lovely cats of every possible stripe and color combination, and I would never want them painted with a brush
Oh,
that would prevent a cat from having a good chance at getting a home.
that's so nice. Your background as a shelter volunteer and then as a scientist in shelters is so valuable because I look at it in this sort of superficial, is it true? And you
Mhm.
look at it, how does this affect the lives of all these cats
Yeah.
hoping to be adopted?
Yeah.
Or, as you said about realistic expectations, oh, I love orange cats, they're the friendliest. Oh, good, I'm going to adopt that one. But that particular orange cat is just who he or she is based
Yeah.
on their life prior. So if you expect that cat to be warm and cuddly and then they aren't immediately, you're like, oh, I got a broken orange cat.
Sure. I think, yeah. And, what I'll say is there's ideally, there would be studies that do look deeper at the effects of genetics on personality, and then that might tie into coat color. So I'm also not saying that there's no relationship. It's just that I haven't seen good evidence. And so we're always looking, prove me wrong, right? Find
Right.
me some strong
Mhm.
evidence that isn't just my bias or my opinion. Everyone has their preferences, but like I said, there's definitely been a few studies now. I think one looked at shelter cats and did like a temperament test, which of
Right.
course those tests are always not necessarily predictive of what a cat will be like in the home, right? When we talk about personality, it's helpful to define what it is. And personality is really this idea that you are consistent across different situations. And so
Right.
people can understand and predict your behavior, right? Like I know what to expect when I talk to Tracy, you know what to expect when you talk to me.
Yes.
And
Yes.
of course, there might be some slight variations, like maybe I'm tired, I haven't had my caffeine yet, or I'm
Right.
in a hurry or
Distracted.
frustrated by something. But for me to be totally different than I normally am would be like a surprise. Part of it is when I think for people who want to live with a cat, everyone has preferences. Do you like a cat who's very active? Do you like a cat who's
Right.
attention seeking and naughty? Or do you like a cat who's
Yes.
super mellow and likes to cuddle with you? And sometimes we like a little bit of all of those things.
Yes. And I think
So,
that really it boils down to every cat truly and genuinely is an individual. There's
absolutely.
no point in trying to put labels on them like you saw in the shelter, even to their color,
Right.
right? Because
Yeah.
what if that was a free-ranging cat who's now in the shelter looking for a home and maybe they're sun bleached? Maybe they're really not happy when they're out.
Sure.
So that's the important thing to realize is that every cat is who he or she is. And they could develop into more of a personality or a different personality if you give them the right home for them,
Sure.
which you don't know what it is until you try.
Yeah, one of my last cats, she was a trapped feral older kitten, and let me tell you, when she first came to my house, she was like a hissing ball of fire, but she ended up being a very sweet cat, right? So you just never know. So I guess the moral of the story, you're allowed to have preferences. If you like orange cats,
Right.
adopt all the orange cats. That's totally
Yeah.
fine. But don't perpetuate myths about them or other colors of cats, especially when those can be harmful and we don't have good evidence.
Perfect. That is the takeaway. Thank you, Michael Maria Delgado, and say hi to all of your torties who are all, of course, perfect cats because they live with you. Bye.
Thanks, Tracy.